Are you running a business and you feel stuck, or you're struggling because you're not achieving the financial results you desire? If so, trust me, I've been there before and it's terrible, and I don't want you to remain here. That's why I'm going to share with you the exact framework that I use to turn around and grow companies. And you can take this framework right now today and you can apply it to your business, and trust me, it will make all the difference in the world as it relates to the trajectory of your business. Now, before I get into this framework that I follow, let me just share this with you. Years ago, I was working with this company. It was a husband and wife, and I went into their business and they wanted me to look at their business and what was going on because they were racking up their line of credit. Their cash flow was terrible. They weren't earning profits. They were fighting all the time. And in fact, I think they were on the verge of a divorce, which was terrible. Right, so I go into the business, I gather their financials, I ask them about their strategy. They didn't really have a strategy. They were just winging it. And I went away and I did a financial analysis. So I analyzed the financials. I looked at the historical performance of the company from an operational and financial standpoint. And then I built out a forecast, and then I created a valuation model showing them, here's your value today, and here's what your value could be. All right, so I go back and I present this to the owner. And all the charts were terrible. Like all the lines were sliding, the profitability was sliding, revenue was sliding, everything looked really bad. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so depressing. And hopefully this doesn't make things worse between them, because they were already butting heads and things were already like terrible at home. But nonetheless, I went in there and I showed them, here's what I discovered. We have an issue with throughput. Working capital is not being managed. Pricing is weak. There's no strategy here. It's not dynamic enough. The offer isn't compelling enough to attract new customers. You're not getting enough leads. And I pinpointed all the areas in the business that were causing issues. Here's the mistake that I made though. I gave them too many things to focus on, which I'm going to get into here in a minute. And this is the big lesson that I learned. And I'm going to share this with you. And this is how I do things ever since this lesson, which was kind of painful to learn. But I gave them too many things to focus on. Nevertheless, though, as time went on, we just kept narrowing down the list just naturally. And they were able to turn around the business with my help. And now they are extremely successful. And look, I'm not like a marriage counselor and I'm no savior, okay? I'm nothing special. I can just tell you that by following this system, they were able to radically transform their business. And now when I talk to them, it's like they got a great marriage, things are better. And it's because success begets success, right? When you're successful, like you're happier, you're going to thrive, your relationships are going to be better. So trust me, like if you're down in the dumps right now because maybe you're not getting customers, maybe you're getting customers, but you don't have profitable customers, or your business isn't profitable, or you're struggling with cash flow, or you're racking up debt because you're just trying to keep the lights on. Like I get it, but there's a way out. And here's the way out, okay? This is what I learned. This is what I want to share with you. CEOs, the best CEOs that I work with are those that can identify the one constraint in their business that's preventing them from growing and becoming everything that they're supposed to become, achieving their full potential, in other words, right? So when you can identify your constraint, and I call this the strategic problem. So when I go into businesses and I put in place a strategy, there's a strategy blueprint that we build. And one of the most important components of the blueprint is identifying your strategic problem. Now, this is the problem, the constraint, the obstacle that's preventing the business from moving forward. And like I said, CEOs are really good at identifying their constraint. And if you're thinking, well, I'm terrible, I don't even know what my constraint is. Well, good CEOs partner with other people to help them identify their constraint. So don't worry about that, right? But if you can identify your constraint, whether on your own or whether with the help of somebody else, and then here's the key, here's the second part. If you can allocate resources, finite resources in your business disproportionately to solving this one constraint, and then do this over and over and over again, this is how you turn around and grow a business. I know it sounds like super simple, but in practice, I don't know why it's so complicated. Just the other week, I was working with a company and I looked at their initiatives, and their initiatives were spot on. I was like, okay, you have strong initiatives. Those initiatives are going to help you to overcome your strategic problem and solve your constraint. But then when I looked at their actions, and this is part of my IAR framework, initiatives, actions, and results. When I looked at their actions, they had so many actions. I was like, what the heck? It was like mind blowing. I'm like, no wonder why you guys are so frustrated and burnt out and just like not making progress, is because you're focusing on all these things. So let's just say your business has a major problem with getting leads. You're not getting enough leads. And if you look at your action list, it's like, okay, we need to improve our employee onboarding process. We need to redo our pricing. We need to switch over to a different accounting system. We need to build a better website, whatever it may be. Like, these are the actions that I commonly see. And I'm like, what the heck? You are constrained by leads. Your business is not growing because you're not getting leads. And here you are focusing on switching your accounting system. Like, what the heck? Like, get more leads and then everything else fixes itself, right? Because think about it. If your business is struggling to get leads and you're not generating revenue, what if you picked up an additional $1 million in revenue? Well, then you can hire people and then you could have cash flow and everything else to fix your accounting issues. You can fix your accounting system later on down the road. But by not addressing your main constraint and by delaying it, guess what? The constraint stays there. You continue to struggle. You burn through a ton of cash. And if you aren't careful, you can work yourself out of business. So these are the two things that CEOs do really, really well. Years ago, when I was a CFO of this fintech company, we were growing so fast. We raised $100 million. We were doing all these acquisitions. And the CEO that I had at the time, he was great. And he was really good at one thing. I mean, he's good at multiple things, but this is the one thing that I learned from him. He was great at pushing the blocks back in. So if you think about the Jenga tower, you know, the Jenga game, it has a bunch of wooden blocks that are stacked up. And the whole point of the game is to not let the tower fall over, and you're removing blocks in the tower and you're slowly pulling them out, and then the tower remains intact. And you're like, okay, great. And then somebody else goes, and whoever pulls out the piece and the tower falls over, they lose, right? So he was really good. Just like, imagine this Jenga tower. Like, the pieces would come out and he like push them back into place. He like force things back into place. And he was also good at like helping us to eliminate tasks that got us off track. So you'd say, Steve, what are you working on? And I'd be like, okay, I'm building this pitch deck for our investor meeting. I'm also building out a financial forecast. I'm helping John over here with our LTV to CAC ratio and tracking that. I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And I'd identify like 6 or 7 things I was working on. He'd be like, Steve, eliminate 2, eliminate 3, eliminate 5, and let's just focus on like 1 and 7. And I'm like, well, what about the other stuff? He's like, eliminate it right now. Put it on the back burner. Let's get these done, and then we'll go from there. And he was right. That's where he's like really smart, because he's like, let's just go raise the capital, get the deck done. And then once you get that done, we'll go raise capital. That solves that constraint. Then it opens up opportunities to grow, and then we'll solve the next constraint. And I think as leaders, we get so bombarded with all these things. And oftentimes, I don't know if we think like we're more valuable when we take on more tasks or what it is, but I'm constantly telling companies, hey, eliminate the items that are on your action list. Okay, like your initiatives are strong, eliminate actions and just focus on the actions with the greatest upside. And that's what I want to invite you to do, as well as in your company. If you can identify the constraints, and then you can allocate a disproportionate amount of your resources, your time, your money, your effort towards solving that constraint. In other words, do everything you can to solve that one constraint and then focus on the next thing. But like, if you're having a problem generating leads, you should be focusing all your time on generating leads until you solve that constraint and then move on to the next constraint. If you don't have cash flow, or you don't have good visibility in cash flow, solve that constraint. If you need more capital to grow, solve that constraint. Go raise capital. Whatever it is, solve the constraint, and then everything else falls in line. That's what I want to leave you with today. If you want to talk about this in your business, you want to hop on a one-on-one strategy call, I'm happy to do that. I'll leave some information down below in the description. You can also connect at coltivar.com if you want to learn more. But if anything, just go out there, try to identify the constraint. I'd love to hear from you. You could always shoot me an email, connect with me on social media and say, Steve, I solved the constraint. This is what it was. Hey, that'd make me really happy, because I will know that you are on the right path. All right. If you found value in this, please be sure to share it. That would mean the world to me. And until next time, take care of yourself. Cheers.